Thursday's joint practice with the Bills will be a telling test of who the Browns will be in 2026.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. The Bills joint practice is finally here, and it's going to be a pretty telling session of what this Browns team is made of, what they're good at. Todd Monken talks a ton about identity. We're going to learn some of those things, I think, on Thursday. And there's three key areas that I think need to be highlighted here in terms of watching what happens. There's the defense, which I'll get to a little bit later. There's the offensive line, which I'll get to a little bit later. And there's, of course, the quarterback position, which we're going to start there because it's the quarterback spot is an interesting spot. Because as I've talked about the last couple days or so, it feels like Todd Monken kind of knows where this thing's heading. It feels like Todd Monken is ultimately going to be choosing Deshaun Watson as his starting quarterback. And so from a standpoint of, I don't know that that's going to change drastically, but I will say, another thing I've talked about is the fact that I don't think Deshaun Watson has overwhelmingly won this job. And so if Shedeur Sanders were to come out on a day where they're going to be sharing the reps, this is a rare instance where it's not one quarterback with the ones for the entire practice. It's going to be one quarterback taking some reps with the ones, the other quarterback taking the next set of reps with the ones, and they're going to sort of alternate. And if Shedeur Sanders were to come out and just absolutely, ball out against the Bills and be lighting it up and have his best day of camp so far, I do think it gives Todd Monken something to think about, especially paving the way or leading into the start he'll make on Saturday against the Bills. And I understand it'll be the Bills' backup players because they've already talked about him and Joe Brady have already talked. Todd Monken and Joe Brady have already talked about the fact that they're not going to play certain groups of guys or certain players on Saturday if they see what they want to see on Thursday. Like, I'm not anticipating Josh Allen's going to be playing for the Bills on Saturday. So, okay. But still, Shedeur's going to get his chance to still start a game, see what he can do in a preseason setting as well. And so this is the first kind of piece of that. If he comes out and he dominates and is lighting it up against the Bills, that will be a pretty good indicator or a pretty positive, step for him that might convince Todd Monken, hey, he's giving me something to think about, and maybe I can change my opinion here on who I think the starter is going to be. And that's the byproduct of Deshaun Watson, again, not doing anything to just run away with the competition, to separate himself so far ahead that, it's 100% his job. He's left that door open at least a little bit. I just think the signs have kind of pointed to Tom Monken has seen the gist of what he's wanted to see from Deshaun. I think he trusts Deshaun a little bit more as the veteran of the team to run the offense and execute it. And it feels like that's where it's heading. But, a really strong performance from Shedeur could change that conversation. And the other part of this, too, for the quarterbacks, and this goes for both quarterbacks, I've highlighted day over day that neither of the quarterbacks have been, exceptional. I don't think either quarterback has come out and just been lighting it up. I go to practice, I watch, and I kind of leave with the same feeling on the quarterback play each day. It's like there was some good, there was some bad. I think overall, Shedeur Sanders has had the better more crisp throwing days, more of those than Deshaun has. Deshaun's been like more up and down, a roller coaster all over the place, where he's got a day where, he's hitting guys and it looks really strong and it's crisp. And then he'll have a day after that. Or really, let me phrase it like this. Deshaun has days where like he looks more crisp than normal and he's completing certain passes, but then in between some of those good passes where he seems like he's in rhythm, he then has a couple wild ones where it's like ball in the dirt, ball too far, interception, whatever. And then there's also just days for him where it's like for example, I think on Wednesday was a day for him that wasn't great throwing the football. He had 2 picks, wildly inconsistent completing it. He had some good throws later on in practice, but nothing exceptional is the word I keep going back to. And so he's been more all across the board, all over the board, and up and down like a roller coaster. Whereas Shedeur, I think, has had more days throwing the football cleanly and crisply and looking more sort of consistent in that way. But around that, we've seen some of the pre-snap stuff. And by the way, Deshaun says some of the pre-snap stuff too, so he's not exonerated in any of this. It's both of them. But we've seen some of the pre-snap stuff from Deshaun or from Shedeur, and I think at times there's been moments where he hasn't been able to stay in rhythm or get into rhythm. So it's been inconsistent for both, and neither has had sort of this. Neither has looked so resoundingly ahead in the competition that the decision should be like a no-brainer for Todd Monken. I just think I think he leans Deshaun because it's a trust thing, mostly. I think he believes that the veteran in the room who's seen more things and looked like he could at least execute the offense on Saturday when they put him out there in that preseason game is I think he just trusts him more, frankly. And I think he saw enough of what he wanted to see, but I don't think he feels like he has, that the obvious answer at quarterback at this stage. That doesn't mean it can't happen. That doesn't mean Shedeur can't get better. And Shedeur is going to play at some point this season. But, because of the state of this competition, and we haven't seen either guy just look clearly far and away like a for sure starting quarterback for the whole season, for the future, whatever. Because of that, seeing somebody put together a good day against another team and against the Bills and joint practices in these sort of controlled settings where you get, hey, we want to work on 3rd and shorts. We want to work on 3rd and longs. We want to work on red zone, whatever. I think that it's going to be an important piece of, learning about these guys and showing us what they're really made of in terms of can they function this offense and run this offense the way that we think. I think back to, or the way that Tom Monken wants, I should say. I think back to 2 years ago, Browns-Vikings joint practices, and it was 2 days of the defenses just dominating the offenses. And the Browns offense in particular looked lost. Couldn't get out of their own way. False start penalties, too many pre-snap issues, weren't lining up correctly, couldn't get guys to go in motion. They were getting flagged every other play, it felt like, and they barely moved the football. And that was kind of a telling sign as to how that season was going to go and how that offense was going to look. So how the quarterbacks operate in this practice specifically, I think is going to be revelatory in terms of, hey, what can we expect from this offense? What can we expect from these quarterbacks in 2026? With the understanding that, yes, there's always room for guys to grow and get better as things go on. But at least as the start of the season is concerned, like, I think this is going to sort of set the tone for that. So quarterbacks are important from the standpoint of maybe Shedeur Sanders can change Tom Monken's mind, and what's this thing look like with both operating the offense against another team and a good team, a Super Bowl contending team, frankly. With that said, there's another part of this on the offensive side that's going to be important to see or watch against the Bills on Thursday, and that's the offensive line. We'll get to that coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. And baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel's giving you a chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick on who you think will hit a home run in their game. And if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. It's a fun way to stay engaged with each day's baseball games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. And the beauty of it is there's a chance to be a home run hit in every single game. Every day is a new adventure. You can ride the hot hand. You can play a matchup. If there's a certain pitcher that you think is going to get rocked, play it. Go make your choice with daily dingers, and it gives you another reason to follow baseball before the first pitch is even thrown each and every single day. So are you ready to play? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Just real quick, don't forget about the Everydayer Club, your chance to get this show ad-free, whatever audio platform you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. I just always throw those two out first because I think they're the most popular. But if there's others out there that you prefer, you can get it there too. Just head to LockedOnBrowns.supercast.com. You can check out the link in the show notes to sign up and learn more. So in highlighting the three key areas I'll be paying closest attention to for Thursday's joint practice with the Bills, I think that staying on the offensive side, and we talked about the quarterbacks already, I think the next area that is going to be critical to pay attention to on that side of the ball specifically is the offensive line. Because to this point, first of all, there's been a lot of shuffling with that group because there's been a lot of injuries to practice and guys kind of in and out on participating because they've been dealing with whatever injury or, Elton Jenkins, for example, this week was out for a day, did individual stuff, and then was talking to a trainer. And so it's been like, it's been a lot of Luke Whippler sort of rotating in. That's been the case for the last couple of weeks, really, because, Elton's kind of dealt with some stuff. Titus Howard didn't practice on Tuesday and then was back on Wednesday for a lighter day. So there's just kind of been a lot of shuffling around for guys. And Tom Munkin's also talked about, like, even with the second unit, like trying guys at different positions. So like KT Levinson's bounced back outside to tackle. So we've talked so much about this group and the importance of it. We know Tom Munkin wants to run the football. We need to see, we have yet to see this group kind of come along and be a well-oiled machine because of some of those circumstances I mentioned, because certain players haven't been able to practice together every day, or guys have been hurt, or guys have been rotating. I think now we have a pretty clear picture of what that starting group's going to be. Tevin Jenkins has been primarily taking the right guard reps over the last week or so. And it's been less of a rotation with KT Leviston. So it feels like that starting group's going to be Spencer Fano, Zion Johnson on the left side. You'll have Elton Jenkins at center. You'll have Tevin Jenkins at right guard, and then you'll have Titus Howard at right tackle. And that sort of feels like the group that's going to be leading this thing off here. But they still got to build that chemistry and camaraderie and get on the same page and sort of be a well-oiled machine. That's the thing that we're waiting for to sort of see in full effect. It hasn't quite happened yet. And I go back to the preseason game last week. They only got 2 series together, the whole group. We know, obviously, Spencer Fano stayed out there. But in seeing that group function, there were some, moments that were good, but there were also some struggles, like not being able to convert a 3rd and short with a run play for Quinshon Judkins was a bit concerning. And we know Todd Monken wants to run the football. I have no doubts in my mind that no matter how inconsistent if his O-line's great, he's going to certainly lean into it. But if his O-line's inconsistent, he's going to still try to run the football a ton because that's part of his offense. It's one of the key things that he wants to absolutely positively do. And so understanding that, I think, there's some important work that's going to be done against the Bills on Thursday to sort of see where that group is at and if they can have more success doing those things. The offensive line play and the unit, it's so much about reps together because guys have different skill sets. They do things differently. You're kind of trying to understand the nuances of the guy you're playing next to. Everyone's got to be on the same page in terms of like who's blocking who, when you recognize a certain look coming from the defense, if it's a double mug of the A gap and there's two guys in the A gap, if there's, a blitz coming, there's just so much communication and cohesion that goes into that, right? So it's important that we see that in full effect and that those guys can start sort of working together. And so Thursday is going to provide a good glimpse into that. I talked about that Vikings joint practice from 2 years ago, or the 2 days of joint practices they had back then, and how you were looking at a situation where, the Vikings dominated the Browns offense and the Browns offensive line, and they really couldn't do much of anything effectively. And so that's going to be something that we absolutely have to pay attention to this time around. Like, are they getting absolutely worked? Are they getting absolutely dominated? What does that kind of look like? And hopefully that's not the case. But if it's ugly and the offensive line is struggling, if the offensive line, like we saw in that preseason game against the Bears, is having trouble moving the football or trying to execute the run game and get that push they need to move the football in the run game, if those are all issues, then there's going to be some concerns. If the pre-snap penalties that we've seen at practice continue to be a concern for that group, there's going to be concerns. If they can't protect the quarterback, there's going to be concerns. This is a look into where this group stands because, yes, they've been dominated in a lot of respects by their own defense for the first 3 weeks of training camp. It's been constantly pressure in the backfield, blowing up run plays, that front that we're all excited about, seeing what it looks like in real time. And we'll get to that here coming up in a little bit. It has looked really good, but is that a byproduct of them being that good and the Browns offensive line still getting up to speed and just not being quite ready to handle it? Or is it a byproduct of the offensive line is just not good, and so any defensive line is going to dominate them? That's kind of what we're looking at here. And so it's going to provide an interesting look into that, get some insights into that ahead of their game on Saturday and ahead of the season. We always knew this joint practice was going to be a pivotal one for getting a read on where the team stands. And I think on the offensive side, like the quarterback part of it, the offensive line part of it, the functioning those two groups to get those two positions together, the quarterback with the offensive line, making sure he's on the same page with that group and that they're executing things appropriately and they know where guys are supposed to be aligned and they know what the cadence is and what the snap count is and who they're blocking and calling out things and adjusting, calling audibles if there's a certain blitz coming. Those things all have to be ironed out, and this will be a big day for that. So we'll see what it looks like, but it's going to be a massive practice for those two key areas. I think specifically on the offensive side, the quarterback position, and obviously the O-line, with a group that's still trying to sort of come together here and get on the same page. Now, that said, I mentioned the defensive line. I'm going to the defensive side of the football next because we've all felt pretty good about the early returns of this defense, especially at practice, without Myles Garrett in it. But is it more so that the offense is just not good right now and they've dominated, or is it that they're that good and they're taking advantage of an offense that has some potential? We're going to find out for sure against the Bills on Thursday. We'll talk about that coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, and today's Locked On episode is brought to you by our friends at Basque and Lather. I've been using Basque and Lather's all-natural, 100% organic hair care products for my beard for a couple years now, and it's been a lifesaver because I used to have some bad beard care habits. I'm talking over-the-counter shampoo in the beard type stuff that created this brittle, scratchy, and uncomfortable beard that I just had to wear around all the time. But now the game done changed. Thanks to Basque and Lather, I got their beard care starter kit, which gave me shampoo, conditioner, oil balm, and their hair growth stimulator formula as well. And now my beard is full. It's soft but strong, and the confidence is on 10, and it's all thanks to Basque and Lather. Explore viral bestsellers and products of healthier hair of all types from Basque and Lather. Go to baskeandlatherco.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON for 20% off. That's 20% off at baskeandlatherco.com, code LOCKEDON.
Final segment here on a Thursday as we get you ready for Bills and Browns joint practices. And of course, that preseason game on Saturday, which won't have quite as much weight given who's expected to play. But this joint practice won't matter. And I highlighted a couple areas of the offense that are going to be important to see how they function and operate in this joint practice between the quarterbacks, between the offensive line. The most important areas arguably on that side of the ball always. I want to go to the defensive side though here real quick, and this isn't about a specific group maybe in its entirety. I mean, I guess you could argue the defensive line is if I'm honing in on a specific group on the defense, maybe it would be the defensive line because no Myles Garrett, new faces, our new face coming in Jared Verse. Guys having to sort of pick up the slack for Myles not being there with Alex Wright, who's had a really good camp. Others, Mason Graham, who's also had a really good camp. Mike Hall Jr., who's also had a really good camp. So there's been positive stuff there. But again, is that been a byproduct of they're going against this new offensive line for the Browns that hasn't figured out its identity yet? We don't know how good they are yet. Is it a byproduct of them being that dominant and they're not going to miss a beat without Myles? So if you're asking me like to hone in on one specific position group on the defense that we need to watch or see closely against the Bills, it's probably the defensive line on that side of the ball. But overall, though, I'm watching this defense closely as an entire unit on Thursday because we don't have a full picture yet of how we think this defense still has a chance to be really good. We think they have a chance to still be, and I've argued top 10 to 12, right? Like if they're in that range, I think they can still be good if the offense is at least competent this year, which that could be a question in its own right. But again, if that's the drop off, it's not quite as drastic as it needs to be. And they're still able to stay in that range and they're still able to make some plays and they're still able to, in some respects, carry this team, then yeah, like they're going to have a chance to compete. But if it is more drastic, then we're having a different conversation. And the early returns have been like, hey, Jared Verse is a really good player. He's not Myles Garrett, but he still has a chance to make plays for this team and anchor that defensive line. The secondary, you got Denzel, you got Tyson Campbell. Could that become the new best dynamic duo of corners in the league? You have a linebacker group headlined by Carson Swessinger, and I think Quincy Williams has had a great camp. And what can those two guys kind of bring to the table, if you will, from a standpoint of like leading this defense and communicating and all those things. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and there's a lot to like, but we want to see it fully in action in terms of can they do it against another team? Or is it fool's gold that we're seeing at practice against an offense that admittedly we all still have some questions about? And I think we all still have some questions about it. So seeing how that comes together, seeing what it all looks like, and seeing what it all looks like, by the way, against someone who's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in football in Josh Allen is an absolutely critical and valuable sign for this defense as a whole. Like, you don't get a lot of reps against a quarterback like that this time of year specifically. Certainly don't get it in preseason games because teams aren't risking injuries a lot of the time. And so you get a controlled setting with Josh Allen being able to run around and make plays in certain situations, and it's going to be a nice tool. Like, can they get similar pressure that they've gotten on this Browns quarterback group at practice on Josh Allen? Can they make his life hard? Can the guys in the secondary still hold up in coverage and make some of the plays that they've been making? There's been interceptions left and right. There was 2 more on Wednesday, interceptions. Deshaun Watson got picked off twice. So, like, there's a lot to on that side of the ball. But we're still kind of waiting to see it in full effect against other teams. And this is the best chance you're going to get to see that with it being a Bills team that has Super Bowl aspirations, and you get to kind of see how it all kind of comes together with that group specifically. And so this is going to be the first chance to get a real sense of, has it been fool's gold because the Browns offense is not good and they've just been dominating that group, or can they do it against a superior opponent who truly is a title contender? And that's what these practices kind of bring to the table. That's why last year the Browns had the joint practice with the Eagles, because that was a Super Bowl contending team that they also want to see kind of how they operated against. And you saw the early signs of the defense at that stage being really, really good. So it's going to be a telling day in general. You're going to get some insight into where this offense stands, where Deshaun stands, where Shedeur stands, where the O-line sort of is as a group as they continue to, unite, come together as a group as a whole. You're going to get some insight into this defense and just how dominant they could potentially be. This is a big one, and we've had this one circled for a while in terms of it mattering for the big picture of this team, of what you're going to get. So let's see what it looks like. We'll obviously have a chance to react to it and talk about some things and draw some conclusions on some things, I think, when it's all said and done, and we'll do that on our next episode. But a big one on Thursday, and I will be there to rehash it all with you, certainly throughout the rest of this week and lean into Saturday when the two teams meet on the field for the preseason. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button, make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Don't forget about the Everydayer Club. You can get the show ad-free wherever you get your podcasts. Just head to LockedOnBrowns.supercast.com. And also, for those who are interested, don't forget about my friends at Locked On Cavs and Locked On Guardians as well. Thank you for being Everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will catch you next time, Cleveland, with reactions to joint practice. See you then.